Some years ago, there was a television show called Mission Impossible, and they made a couple of movies starring Tom Cruise called Mission Impossible. Of course, Mission Impossible was about CIA agents who worked, of course, for the federal government, and they were given what seemed to be impossible missions to accomplish. And they always had a choice to make as to whether or not they would accept the mission. I was thinking about Mission Impossible when I was reflecting on the gospel today, because God is talking about what seems to be a mission impossible. But it is a mission that if we accept it, if we accept the assignment, God will give us the strength to accomplish even what seems to be impossible, even what seems to be miraculous. And what are the words Jesus uses to talk about a mission impossible? He said, "The harvest is great, the laborers are few." In other words, the world is in need of God's agents. To do what? To carry his message. To deliver his message of mercy to the masses of people who are hurting, so many people hurting in the world today, and in need of God's divine touch. This reading from the Old Testament uses an interesting phrase that kind of reached out. Isaiah 66 talks about the milk of God's comfort. The milk of God's comfort. There's nothing more consoling than the milk of a mother's comfort, the comfort of a mother's milk. And so that image is used by Isaiah to think about how God comforts us with his presence in our lives, like a mother comforts her child. God's milk of consoling comfort is what people need today. What do people need? His care, his compassion, his mercy, his patience, his healing, his forgiveness, the milk of his comfort. Mission impossible, seemingly. But the Pope seems to be tapping into this image of accomplishing a mission impossible, because the Pope is fond of repeating that the church is a missionary church. As members of the church, we are like missionaries. Missionaries sent on a mission. Given a mission. Missionary. We're given a mission to carry God's message. All of us are agents of God by virtue of our baptism. All missionaries of mercy, sent to accomplish a mission which just seems to be impossible, to make a difference. Seems to be an impossible mission to make a difference, to strike a blow for God, to bring God's consoling comfort into the world today, into our own small little world. We can't change the whole big world, but we can have an influence on the little world in which we live. Galatians 6 says, "Peace and mercy to all." God's goal is, God's mission is, for us to help people come to recognize God's peace and mercy is available to all. There's a growing hatred in the world, a plague of darkness that seems to be enveloping the world these days. A lot of pain, a lot of innocent people suffering. From Paris to San Diego to Orlando to Istanbul and now Iraq, it seems like every couple of days now, we're hearing about the hatred that's spreading like a pall of darkness over the world, clouds of darkness. But God's mercy wants to break through the darkness and bring light. God's mercy is available to all and challenges all of us to make a difference. So many people are self-absorbed today, locked up in their small world of their own self-seeking concerns. We're all tempted to be locked up in our own world, where we fail to recognize the people that God sends our way that are in need of God's mercy and the deliverance of that message, the missionary message that we're all called to deliver. Hurting humanity. A lot of hurting people. The Holy Spirit stirs our hearts, pointing us in God's direction, and shows us to whom and to how to carry that message. The Holy Spirit, God's personal presence in our lives, the Holy Spirit, helps us to respond to the needs of others if we're in tune. If we're in tune with the stirring of our hearts by God. God stirs our hearts. You ever sense that God is urging you to do something good? You ever had the feeling that you're being drawn to do something good and you sense deep within that it's something that you need to do? That's God when that something is good. Sometimes we turn away and don't respond to that urging of the Holy Spirit. Other times we do. I was in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania this last week at the battlefield there, and then we traveled into Virginia to go to other Civil War battlefields. And one of the most interesting battlefields was Fredericksburg, Virginia. During the Civil War, there was a great battle there. And you can stand on the hill overlooking the town. And there's a steep decline from the hill. You're standing on the hill. And there's a stone wall. And then there was an open field. And there in the Civil War, a great battle occurred when the Southern soldiers were behind the stone wall on the top of the hill. And the Northern soldiers, the Federal soldiers, came from below, up an open field, to try to take the hill and take the stone wall. Thousands were butchered by cannon fire and by musket fire of the Southerners at the top of the hill. Thousands of Union soldiers. They said it was like they were being mowed down like wheat in front of the scythe, cutting them down, just falling like wheat falls before the scythe, the sickle. There's a story that we learned about. There's a statue at the top of the hill, right in front of that stone wall where the Southerners stood. And right there, there is a statue of a man by the name of Sergeant Richard Kirkland. And the story behind this Sergeant Kirkland is very interesting, because after so many Federal soldiers were killed, they were lying out on the field, moaning and crying for help. And nobody could reach them because the Southern soldiers would pick them off if they tried to help any of the Northern soldiers lying there dying. And so the story is the Southern soldier by the name of Sergeant Kirkland took a chance during the lull in the fighting. Even though he could have been shot by the Northern soldiers, he went out on the field with canteens filled with water. And he went from one dying, wounded Northern soldier to another, giving them water to drink and consoling them with a word of kindness. And everybody stood in awe as they watched this lone Southern soldier ministering to the enemy by giving them water to drink. Both sides called him the Angel of Mary's Heights, because that area where the Southerners were was called Mary's Heights. He was an angel of mercy, Sergeant Kirkland. He was an agent of God. God stirred him to go and minister to his enemy, who was dying there on the battlefield. He accomplished what seemed to be an impossible mission. Impossible mission. To go out and minister to the enemy that was just butchered. But with God's help, mercy was delivered to the dying that day by Sergeant Kirkland. And God's mercy flowed like the milk of comfort on that bloody battlefield in Fredericksburg, Virginia. As I said, I was in Gettysburg, and we were in the church called St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. During the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, that church was used as a field hospital for soldiers of both sides. There's a stained glass window in that church on the side, and it's an image of these nuns, these sisters of charity, ministering to the dying and the wounded soldiers there in the hospital, which was that church, that very church. And down below it, there's a motto, which is the motto of the Sisters of Charity. And the motto reads, "The charity of God urges us on." That's their motto. The charity of God urges us on. It's on their coat of arms. The charity of God urged them to minister to both sides. It was God stirring their hearts to bring God's mercy and to deliver the message. The love and mercy of God urges you and urges me sometimes, if we only listen and are in tune, and to begin to see others as brothers and sisters in need of the milk of comfort, not enemies. Now, in our own life, there are people from whom we are alienated, people perhaps have hurt us, and people that we consider to be enemies. What do we do with them? Let the Holy Spirit tell you what to do. He will urge you, one way or another, to reach out to those enemies. That doesn't mean to tell them to go ahead and walk over you again, but it does mean to follow the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. To urge you to do something to reach out to those people from whom you have been alienated. This is the year of mercy. Mercy, what is it? God's compassion and tenderness, the milk of his comfort. You and I are messengers of mercy, missionaries of mercy. You know, the tradition of the church outlines the works of mercy, and you see them on the front of the bulletin or inside the bulletin every week during this year of mercy. There's the corporal works of mercy and also the spiritual works of mercy. The spiritual works of mercy describe simple ways that we can accomplish God's mission. They come from an inner stirring of the heart, the Spirit of God urging us to do something, nudging us to do something good, like what Sergeant Kirkland did. What are the spiritual works of mercy? These are what God is calling you and me to do, to comfort the hurting. There are people that cross our path that are hurting. To comfort the hurting. To instruct the ignorant. There are people who don't know right from wrong, don't know good from evil, don't know God from anything. Instruct the ignorant. Warn the sinner. When was the last time you ever warned a sinner? That doesn't mean you hit him over the head with a Bible. But it does mean to let them know that because you care for them, you believe they're on the wrong path. You have to look at the right moment, the right time, the right place, and the right words to use with people when you warn them that they're on the wrong path. To forgive freely. How freely do you forgive? Sometimes we're very stingy with forgiveness. The works of mercy, freely forgive. He freely forgives. Be patient with all. It doesn't say be patient with the people you like, or the people you're comfortable with, or the people who cater to you. Be patient with all. Console the doubting. A lot of people doubting today that there's any reason for us to hope in a future. Counsel the doubting. Let them know that there is reason for hope because he is our hope. And if we trust in him, no matter how dark it seems to be, the light will always break through. Counsel the doubting. And 7, pray for the living and the dead. Pray for others. Sometimes we're so caught up praying for ourselves that we forget to pray for others, to remember the living and the dead, those people that God has sent into our lives, some of whom have passed to the other world. Impossible to accomplish? Not with his help. God is stirring us up. He's stirring our souls. Can we feel it inside here? The devil tries to hold us back from doing anything for anyone. The Lord stirs our hearts to make a difference, to deliver the milk of God's comfort one day at a time, one moment at a time, one person at a time. In the old TV show Mission Impossible, at the beginning they would always set the stage for what was going to occur in the show. And after the federal people would tell the agent what his mission was, his mission impossible, they would always ask, if you are willing to accept this mission, do this or that. If you're willing to accept this mission, then tell him today at the Mass, when you come before him in communion, yes, Lord, I want to accept the mission which seems to be impossible that you're giving me, the mission to make a difference and to bring light into a darkened world, to perform those spiritual works of mercy, to begin to make a difference. With God's help, we can and will find his mission accomplished. Using us and all that we are. A good prayer is this: Lord, use my eyes to see the needy. Lord, use my ears to hear the cries of the hurting. Lord, use my mouth to speak kindly. Lord, use my heart to feel compassion. Lord, use my hands to reach out and to help. Lord, use my feet to walk your path to those who are in need of your mercy. Mission impossible. Will you accept his mission? Will I? One day at a time.